very unfortunately, U.S. China are not able to continue the trust, which is very important for the continuation of the two countries work together for the common prosperity. Yeah, so I think one of the key challenges for all of us in this era, that is some forces push forward securitization almost everything. Okay, that's securitizing this, securitizing that. That is created tension. That is reduce the benefits from the international economic cooperation. Yeah, for our better future, U.S.-China, I think the politicians as well as the public should be more open-minded. The competition can promote their progress, promote the more the new technologies. All of us will benefit. Okay, so we have to change the mindset. Okay, one country, the dominant country, should be dominant on everything. If the competitors do something good, think that is a threat, even a security threat. Okay, that is some kind of the unhealthy mindset. I think people should think about it and to think about what will they can get from the vicious cycles of competition. I hope some people in the U.S. Congress can hear our conversation. They should learn to be more, open-minded.
Well, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is that I think the issue of military competition is not grounded in reality in the sense that the U.S. has been very aggressive militarily. If you look at what has been spent on wars and what has been accomplished with wars and how they got started, it's been an integral part. Not something Americans are proud of, but it's the reality. So whether you go back to Vietnam or Afghanistan or Iraq and just go down the list. And so if you think about the U.S., we basically invaded and took over land from Mexico simply because we could. And if you go back to China, apart from not being militarily aggressive, the other dimension is where was the art of war written? It's part of the way you think. So the very last thing that you do is bring about violence.
Mr. Walker, I think it's very interesting to compare with the different history and tradition between the U.S. and China on the approaches to war. We'll see the huge differences between the two countries. Huge. I remember about this point. I think reported by the U.S. media, some local newspaper, they published a report about the very important telephone conversation between two U.S. former presidents, President Jimmy Carter and President Donald Trump. Back to the year of 2018. Donald Trump was very worried about the rise of China, the advancement of the infrastructures in China. He said a lot of things about that. Very worried about left behind of the U.S. They make a telephone call to the former President Jimmy Carter, ask for his advice, how to deal with China, how to help the U.S. The President Jimmy Carter said it very frankly. He said, in my term, the U.S. established diplomatic relations with China. China had never fought a war with any country. Over the last 40 years, the era of reform and opening up, China has fully concentrated on construction, modernizations. That is the major reasons for China to achieve such a huge, tremendous progress. Look at the U.S. He argued that he accounted, you can imagine how many wars, interventions the U.S. has been engaged in the last 40 years. In his calculations, the U.S. totally spent over $4 trillion on this war and military interventions. And how to deal with China, I think he implied it very simple. Follow the China. Go after the peace policy, to be engaged, be concentrated on domestic construction, domestic benefits of people. That is, I think, this smart leader to be commended to us today.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. And on the issue we were talking about in terms of the competition, my feeling is at some point we need to imagine a meeting where the U.S. and China are coming to the table and saying, okay, we've had lots of dialogues. Here are the 10 things we want most from you. You give us the 10 things you want most from us. And you could have very constructive win-win dialogues where China says, okay, we understand you need to protect your lead in nanochips, but there's a lot of restrictions you've got on chips that have nothing to do with nanochips. So we would like you to change your tariffs and change your sanctions.
Yes.
We respect your right to protect what you have in terms of those technologies that have clear military implications. But there's a lot of what you're doing that goes way beyond that. We, the U.S., would like to have more access to your markets than we have today. So if we look at financial services, we've got some global banks that are world-class who would love to have more freedom to be able to compete and help you build more stable capital markets, as an example. So I don't think starting that dialogue on economically sensitive issues or military is going to work because the two sides aren't ready for it. But why wouldn't you start that dialogue on global warming, on nuclear proliferation, on how you deal with refugees, how you deal with terrorism, and how you deal with pandemics? These are all shared concerns we have. Why wouldn't we want to share data and share expertise and say, okay, here's what we're going to do collectively. So the next time there's a pandemic, we're going to share research, we're going to share vaccines, and we're going to make our people healthier. But I think what we've got to do first is find safe areas that are not in the tension that's around military and economics, and just learn to be able to give and take. And if you could get into that habit, then smart people are going to say, well, we could start to apply some of these safe lessons to areas that are more sensitive. And maybe we'll never get to military. That's okay, but there's a lot of room for progress.
Yeah, I think, Ms. Walker, you have made very valuable, realistic suggestion to the leaders of the two countries. Let's take care of each other's concerns. Let's cooperate on the common interests.
Yes.
We can be starting with some of the cautious steps.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that is very, very useful. Yes, but there is a lot of politics there,
Right.
international
That's not where we are.
politics and domestic politics.
Yeah.
Talking about the politics, we have to discuss about the prospect of the U.S. election.
Yes.
In your opinion, who will be the next president of the United States?
I would say at this point it's very unclear. And the reason I say that, I saw last night, the latest poll would say that Donald Trump has a 2-point lead, 48% to 46%. That's well within rounding error. The other thing that's going on is you've got a reasonable proportion of Republicans who have said in polls that if he is convicted of some of the 91 indictments against him that are criminal, we would not support him. In other words, they're willing to say, if all of that unravels and goes away, we support Trump. But now, is that a lot of Republicans? No, it's not a big number. But if the margin is only 2%, you don't need a lot of people, maybe 5 to 10% of his supporters, to say, I really am not comfortable electing someone to be president who has been indicted and convicted of a serious crime. So I think at this point, we don't know. We also have a judicial system that has become increasingly politicized. So Trump has a very clear strategy. His strategy is delay the process until after the election. And anything he's convicted of, he is legally allowed to pardon himself, which is a ridiculous concept, but that's the way the law works. So he's in a notion of, let's delay the trials, let's ask for more inquiries, more information, more debate of just push or push. And of course the Democrats are pushing to accelerate it. Nobody knows how that's going to play out because this is going to come back to individual judges who have the ultimate authority in this space.
Very interesting.
But the sad thing is the divisiveness between the two sides is at an all-time high. So if you have a Trump election, you will have Democrats, some of them saying, I'm out of here. I'm moving to Europe, I'm moving to Canada, I'm not going to stay in this. And if you have a Biden election, you're going to get the same reaction from the people who supported Trump. Because when you look at maps of the U.S. So if you took a state like a Pennsylvania, and this would be a typical state, you would see blue for Democrat in the city of Philadelphia,
Right.
in the city of Pittsburgh, and the rest of the map is all red. So you've got a real, almost a class warfare, where those in the rural areas feel that they have been looked down upon by the coastal elites, and some of that's true, and they're very angry about it, and they want their freedom to do the things that matter most to them. So they want maximum freedoms, they want no abortions, they want gun rights so they can carry guns anywhere, it's always up to them, and the other side wants the opposite. And there's not a lot of gray area in between. So we're going to get one side or the other winning. And we've seen what's happened in the past. I mean, last time you basically had Trump basically say it was a stolen election. And to this day, over half of Republicans would say Biden did not win legitimately, which really undermines the whole integrity of democracy if you don't believe the elections, even though there were 60 or plus court cases. And every time Trump lost, because there were no facts to support anything that was being asserted. So in effect, he was a bad loser who wanted to use the courts to change what he didn't win fairly in the marketplace.
As you said, the U.S. has become very politicized and polarized on the value, the ideology between so-called liberals and conservatives. So 1 month ago, Chinese media, the Global Time, invited me to write a commentary piece on the cases of the Texas refugees, the crisis.
Okay,
my article is entitled as "The Culture War in the United States." I can talk about that is a division between so-called the red states and blue states. That is a deepening division between the coastal area and the inland, between the urban area and with the countryside. So I think that is really challenges to the U.S. Some people even talk about the U.S. might be at the verge of a new civil war. What's your understandings of the situation? What's a partial result if the Trump start his second term?
I mean, Trump really is the wild card, because, and especially with respect to China, because if you go back to the timing of when Trump launched his anti-China tirade, it was in the middle of his first year with COVID. And for the first couple of months of COVID, he said, it's not real, it's the common flu. Then he would go on television and he'd say, well, maybe if you just inject yourself with disinfectant, it'll go away, which of course got the medical community going crazy, because of course that's a ridiculous idea. But it then became apparent that something he was downplaying as not serious was in fact deadly serious. There were hundreds of thousands of people who died early on from COVID, many of them very painful deaths, where their family were not allowed to be with them, where they were on ventilators because they couldn't breathe. So he's a very clever politician. So he literally took China and made it the #1 issue. And he, over and over, he said, they stole our jobs, they stole our IP, they are our #1 strategic threat because Russia's basically been disintegrating. And so if you think about the people who support him are the people who have not lived the American dream. The American dream is you will always have a better standard of living than your parents. And if you look at the blue-collar workers in America, that's no longer true. So he's basically said, this is not your fault. This has nothing to do with your education or your work ethic. It's because bad people have done bad things to you. And they include the Democrats. They include China. and you just go right down the list. And do they then ask, well, help me understand? No, they like the answer, because it says, you're not comfortable that you're living the life you wanted. It's not your fault. Let me tell you who did it to you. And so you go back to the age-old good guys and bad guys. And it's very counterproductive. My own feeling is that both political parties need to come up with quality candidates for not this election, but the next election. Because it really is ridiculous. Biden is too old. You watch him when he's on television. He struggles to be coherent in the way he talks. He struggles to be able to walk in a very easygoing way. And if you look at Trump, he's already declared, he's going to raise tariffs, he's going to undo Obamacare, he's going to get rid of the infrastructure bill, right? We can't have a democracy where people don't have a choice between two quality candidates. And people don't know how we got to this position. I have no idea how but we're there. My own feeling is it's never going to get to a civil war. I mean, if you think about it, the closest we got was January 6th. And the reality is you had like 500 people who were out of control. And if the government had responded effectively by calling in the National Guard early on, nothing would have happened. And it's not going to happen again, because the next time it happens, the National Guard will be there in a heartbeat, and it'll be prevented. But I think if you go back to the Civil War, the amount of tensions and the magnitude of the tensions, because the North was basically challenging the whole way of life in the South. Slaves are going to go, and with that's going to be your cotton industry. And so the South basically said, you are taking away from us what is most near and dear to us. I don't think you've got those kind of stakes. No one is proposing on either side that we're going to have a total radical change in the way we live and in our economy. So we're not going to have a civil war, but we're at the point where, even though there isn't bloodshed of scale, it's made the government basically ineffective. So in terms of making progress on real issues like infrastructure, like healthcare, the cost of Medicare, all of these things, we ought to be tackling those issues, and we're not.
The reasons I raised the question, possibility of a new civil war in the U.S., because I read some important experts, even their analysis, and even there is some warnings from the government agencies on this. But of course, that is warning. Okay, the better not to go. So in that way, here to make me deeply worried about U.S. politics and its spillover to the U.S.-China relations. Okay, that is mainly the scapegoating China on everything. Blaming China on every policy failure in the United States. That can be very dangerous. Push that is relations between the two important powers in the world to a very dangerous direction and put them on very dangerous course of relationship. So that is something I'm worried about the role of the U.S. Congress, worried about the U.S. political institutions. Right. So I think it is, as I already suggested, that the U.S. The politicians should work on your own problems, fix the problems, to find the solutions, to use the resources to handle these domestic problems, not just to the direct attention of the public to the outside. The countries like China. So I'm very worried about that. So I think China, we know that is the rhetoric of elections. Because we are in the era of the social media. All these things in China, in US and other places, widely reported. In China, people know it, so they might be increasing the skeptical approach to the United States. Very unfortunately. Very unfortunately. So I hope in the elections, the politicians should be more responsible to the U.S. people and to the world peace.
Well, I share the hope. I do not share it with any optimism.
Wow.
Because the problem is Trump has created an environment which is basically my way or the highway. So he has shown zero interest in compromising on anything. So he's basically saying, Biden is the worst president we've ever had. Here are the 5 things he's done that are terrible. If you put me in charge, and ideally a Republican Congress to back me up, I will act immediately to undo all the terrible things he's done. And so if that's your going-in point of view, and you've got the Trumpsters who support him are ready to follow him exactly that way. So even his own Republican competitor, Nikki Haley, who was running, as in opposition, he basically said, I don't want her votes. Anyone who voted for her, even though they're Republicans, I mean, so he's really made it, you're going to do exactly what I want or you're not on my team. And you know what? He's going to capture, if he's got 45% of the American public, he'll get 35 to 40% of them who will agree with that. And will support whatever he says he wants.
as yours, I just share the same observations and share the hope.
Yes.
And share the pessimistic.
Yeah.
And we are seeing that is the government has reached a new goal, that is to continue the reform.
Yes.
To continue the opening up policy. That is very important.
I totally agree.
To China, to U.S., and to the world. Secondly, and last year, China has achieved a 5.2% growth rate.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not bad, even higher than the average.
Yeah, no.
Higher the major
Coming out of COVID, that's pretty good.
Yes, so China's economy is still in the process of called recovery growth. Okay, that is post-COVID.
Yes.
I think that this year, I just attended the Spring Capital Forum in Guangzhou by the Guangfa Securities. I'm invited to deliver a major speech on the international environment and U.S.-China relations. Yeah, I sent some of the positive signals to the investors.
Yeah.
So 2024 can be a great opportunity, a window for investment in China and outside China. One reason that China is maintaining that it's a smooth growth model transformations. Okay. Secondly, China is trying to improve its external relations, especially the relations with the United States. So I think the San Francisco leaders meeting is very important to all of us. China will properly handle across the Taiwan Strait relationship. Yes, to make that the Taiwan issues no longer are top the geopolitical factors which would influence the confidence of international investors. According to a lot of reports, that the U.S. election has become the top concern to a lot of big companies. All these factors combined together make me to make some sort of assessment. 2024 can be good opportunities for the Chinese investors. Okay, I have the reasons to be cautiously optimistic about the Chinese economic prospects. Thank you very much, Mr. Walker, for sharing your observations and thoughts on these very important issues. We just share the cautiously optimistic about the Chinese economy, and we also have some good hope for the U.S.-China relations. We hope the two great countries can work together for the benefits of the people of the two countries and the benefits of the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, pleasure.